Assalamu alaikum. I hope everybody can hear me very clearly. If you can hear me, you can write in the chat room, chat box to let me know that you can hear me. Can you please confirm that you can hear me? You can write in the chat box. Great. So I hope you can hear me and you can see me as well. So we'll just start right on time. Great. 1 minute, I'll just... Okay, so you can hear me and you can see me as well, right? All right, great. So let us start right on time. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Usman Mazhar, and I'll be trying to cover today a complex topic. It's complex in the sense that it takes a lot of time to explain this topic, critical thinking. And usually we do like 1 day or 2 day workshop on these kind of topics. But today I'm trying to do this in like 45 minutes or 1 hour time. So just hang on with me, take a lot of notes. And if you have any questions, you can ask in the chat room or I'll unmute you as well. Walaikum assalam. So my name is Usman Mazhar. I'm a coach, a leadership coach. I'm also an HR professional, an engineer, and have worked in different capacities and can share with you some experiences as well. I just did this session one-on-one, like for the half day, 2 weeks back, and people were saying that that time was also not enough. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to fit this into 45 minutes so it becomes as useful as possible for all of you, inshallah. So let us start, and let me tell you a little bit about the importance of thinking in our lives, whether it's professional life or personal life. Thinking plays a very important role. Let me see if somebody is not in the waiting room. Okay, nobody is there. Great. So thinking plays a very important role. No matter what you're doing in life, personal or professional, at some point in time, at every point in time, you're thinking. And what thinking does is, what is thinking? Thinking is processing the certain information that you have and giving an output. Now, thinking, when you're doing the thought process, it goes through different filters. And those filters are of your assumptions, your experiences, the things that you have done in your life before, the way you have been brought up, where you have lived, your family, and the different views about life that you have. And those kind of filters, when the information passes through that and you do a little bit of thought process, okay, you did a little, let me hold the mic in my hand. If you do a little bit of thought process, that is called thinking. But thinking is influenced by the different thoughts in our mind, like, for example, as I said, your assumptions and your experiences. How we use those thoughts and how we put them all together, that is important, because that enables us to make the right decisions. And if we do not use those filters in the right way, like our experiences and the things that we have in our minds, the things or the thoughts that we hold inside of us, we will be making wrong decisions, or will not be making very good decisions, so to say. So critical thinking is very important from that point of view. If I ask you, and I will be engaging you a lot in during this session, trying to ask you questions, what is critical thinking? So what comes to your mind? How can you define critical thinking? If somebody can write in the chat box as well. How can you define critical thinking? I hope my voice is clear now. So if anybody can share what comes to your mind when you think about critical thinking? No answer. Thinking that makes a difference. Thinking that makes a difference. That's an interesting answer. An analytical approach to a problem or issue. Yes, that's a very good answer as well. Okay. And anybody else that would like to share? Thinking to fullest extent. Okay, that's interesting. Thinking to fullest extent, critical thinking. But the word critical, when I asked somebody, they said it means to criticize or to critique something, taking a subjective and objective approach. Very nice. So what are we taking the subjective or objective approach towards? Like when we are, somebody said to me that, critical thinking means that you are critiquing something. So what are you critiquing? Are you critiquing the person in front of you, or use of cause and effect analysis? Right. But all these tools allow you to, as they say in English, criticize or to critique something. Now, my question is that what are we critiquing? Are we critiquing ourselves, or are we critiquing the person in front of us? What do you think? Ourselves. And how many times do we do that to critique ourselves? That when we are thinking and we are trying to approach something and we see somebody in front of us, or we have certain information in front of us, how many times are we critiquing ourselves, or how many times we are critiquing the person in front of us or the environment that we are in? And usually, if I answer this question myself, it is the person in front of us or the environment we are in. And what critical thinking does is that it invites you, it enables you to critique your own thought process, to critique your own self, to critique your own mentality, to critique how you think and how you make decisions. Generally, I miss out ourselves and try to think about environment. Very true. So critical thinking, as I said, enables you and invites you to think or to criticize ourselves, our thought process, our decision-making process. This is how I would like to define critical thinking in the most simplistic way, out of the textbook, not out of the textbook, right? So let us move forward, okay? If you have any questions, you can always put it here in the chat room, and I'll be more than happy to take that. So some ground rules as we start. We'll take care of the timing. The time is right in front of me. I'll try to finish in time and then take your questions as well. If I'm not able to go too much in depth, then you can always join my WhatsApp group, and I'll be sharing more information there as well. The mobile phones should be off. That's just good for you, so there is no distraction. Ask questions if you have questions, and if I'm able to answer all your questions, I'll be more than happy to do that. How to convince ourselves to critical thinking? Yes, so I'll try to come to that as well. And notes. Take a lot of notes, because this is a complex subject. Like I said, there's a full one-day workshop on this. So I would say I'll try to cover a few things, share some checklists with you. So I'll really recommend that you take notes. And at the end, I will also share the presentation with you, but take some notes, because there will be things which are not in the presentation that I'll try to say or try to cover. Technology, of course, we are relying upon technology. We're connected online. We have the internet, we have the Zoom. Things can go wrong sometimes. So if it does happen like that, just be patient and hang on, and we'll try to make the best of it, inshallah. Okay, so critical thinking, I've asked you, what is it? Now, if I ask you why critical thinking is important, why is critical thinking important? If anybody would like to answer that question. Why do you think is critical thinking important? Yes. To have a fair judgment. Yes. To rule out possible mistakes. These are all inputs to the process. These are all inputs to the process. Okay. So better decision making. Very nice. Good answer. Better decision making. And to have a clear picture at the end. Better decision making is something that really holds on, and all the other answers are also right. But the most important thing is that you're able to make good decisions, Now, why is decision making so important? Understand themselves. True. So critical thinking is important because I'm critiquing myself. I'm not using the word criticizing. I'm critiquing myself, the way I think. Why am I thinking the way I'm thinking it? And what makes me think the way I'm thinking? What are the factors which are influencing my thought process? All right. And why is it important? One of the answers that were here is good decision making, as I said in the title slide as well. And the other answers that you have also mentioned, to understand yourself, to have a clear picture, to solve the problems. So critical thinking is important because you want to make good decisions in life. Now, when you're making good decisions in life, remember that in life we face different situations. We face different situations, and in every situation, it requires us to make a decision. Now, whether that is even that you want to go to one city or another city, what do you want to do in the evening today? These are all decisions. Now, some decisions are very important. Some decisions are not that important. Some decisions, they require a lot of thought process. And some decisions just don't require a lot of thought process. But no matter which decision you are making, the quality of the decision depends upon how good that decision was. And how do you know that what was a good decision? Can you somebody tell me? How do you know that what was a good decision? How do you know that you have made a good decision? That's the question. And you can just answer anything. There's no right or wrong answer. If you reach a desired outcome, it depends on experience. When we get desired outcomes, very nice. But what happens? When you do not get your desired outcome? Is it not a good decision? Is it a bad decision? That gives us our desired outcomes. So stress becomes an outcome. Let me share with you my experience-based definition of a good decision. All right. And this is not out of the textbook. It's just what I've seen or what I've experienced. If you make a decision and there's an outcome and there is no regret at the end, and you know that you've tried your best, and you know that you have looked at all the angles and perspectives, I say that was a good decision. But if the outcome is good and you've achieved what you wanted, but there's still some regret that I could have tried something else as well, I say that was not a good decision. What do you think? So I connected with a sense of regret. If I have a regret, if I have a thought that I could have tried better, I could have tried something else, I could have thought about it in a different way, this could have been a better decision. So that is how I kind of define it, right? And you might agree or disagree, but decisions are very important. We can make decisions for others, not for ourselves. Please explain why, if it is true, and how we can do for ourselves. When you're making decisions for yourselves, you are actually impacting not only yourself, but you're impacting the people around you and the environment around you. Because we all have stakeholders in form of family, in form of organizations that we work for, in form of teams that we have. So all the decisions that we make, it is very rare that those decisions will only be affecting us individually, but they will be affecting people around us as well. So that is important. And that is why when you make decisions, it is based on certain information that comes to you, and you pass that information through some filters that you may reach a decision. Now, we are going to talk about in critical thinking those filters, about those filters. Now, my next question is, can you think of someone who makes good decisions? List down 3 characteristics that just come to your mind, anything that makes you think that that person makes good decisions. Now, that person could be living or person who is not living, and person could be from any field, and you don't need to name that person. But just 3 things that you feel that this person makes really good decisions. What does that person do? If you can share any experience with us here. What do you, immediate decision, first of all. Immediate decision, first of all. So that person makes an immediate decision, all right? Other characteristics that you can think of that, that you think are there in a person who makes a good decision, that you have seen actually in your life, weighs the outcome. So they look at the outcome, a rational approach. Thank you. Anything else? weighs the outcome, a rational approach. They take a rational approach. Anything else that comes to your mind that you have seen in a person who makes good decision? Conservative. What is conservative? Conservative is being cautious, being careful. Bigger purpose. These are all secretive that impact others positively. Tell me some actions. Do some actions come to your mind? These are all motherhood statements. These are statements who think about others first. All right. Can you think of actions like they consult others? They consult others. They take advice. They take suggestions, or they consider the alternatives. Yes. So what comes to your mind? I would ask you to write it down as well. They observe the situation. A decision is only as good. Keeping the overall picture in mind rather than just themselves. Think about others first. Very nice. Advice from right person. Yes, advice, taking advice and taking these things is important. So just whatever comes to your mind from a person who you see makes good decisions, just write it down for yourself. And I really hope that you have some kind of a paper and pen so that you can, write down notes. Hello? Okay. If you want to say something, then you can always raise your hand and I'll be more than happy to take and weigh loss, big and small losses. Yes. Okay. So these are some of the characteristics that you see in a person who makes good decisions. Now, I have a small quiz for you, and that is this. Now, 3 questions you can ask from yourself while making decisions. I'll give you a checklist that will enable you to ask different questions for you to know that how well prepared you are to make a decision, right? How does that sound? But before that, let's take this quiz. I did this quiz on LinkedIn as well. If you guys did that on LinkedIn, I would request you to do it here as well. And let's see what comes to your mind. All right. So which of the following is it right? Why are you doing is a kind of decision? So I've launched a poll here, which shares an assessment that which of the following do you miss out usually when making decisions? You can choose more than one as well, but you can just choose one. Interesting. I'll just keep this open for another few seconds so that everybody has the opportunity to fill this up. And whatever you're filling, just write it down for yourself as well. So we have 21 people who have already filled this. I'll just keep it on for another 10, 15 seconds so that everybody has filled it. And let me end it then. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now. We have 30 responses out of 37 people. And I'm sharing the results. So can you see the results? You see that 60%. Okay, I'm sorry, if you didn't get the screen for the poll, you can write your answer here as well. So, I mean, because Zoom does that sometimes that you don't see the poll. So if somebody didn't see the poll, I apologize about that, but you can write your answer here as well, or you can just directly message me as well. And, and it's more about for your own self-reflection. But if you see the result here, 60% people believe that they do not challenge their own assumptions. And this is amazingly, if I stop sharing this with you, I did the same poll for LinkedIn and look at the results. Right? 60% people on LinkedIn also believed that they do not challenge their own assumptions when they're making decisions. They do examine the facts, they ask questions, they can consider alternate options, but they do not challenge their own assumptions. And this is one of the most common things that we see, challenging assumptions and biases that we have. Anything that is not based on evidence or is not concrete. And this is what we saw on LinkedIn as well, and this is what we've seen in the participants as well. And if you see that one of these things is something that you miss out, like you have chosen for yourself as well, then know that we need to further improve on our critical thinking based on this, right? Let's move forward. If you have any questions, we can ask. So how do we define critical thinking based on all this? Now, there's some 4 lines written here, but the main thing is the yellow part that you need to focus on is, actually focusing on factual information. So critical thinking is any thinking that is based on facts, data, evidence related to it. Ideally, critical thinking is to be done objectively, meaning without influence from personal feelings, opinions, biases, or assumptions, right? So this is something very important. We will be recording, be updated. Yes, I will upload the recording, and I'll share with you the recording. I'll share with you the presentation as well, and it will be available in my WhatsApp group. So anybody who's here who's not joined the WhatsApp group, they can join that, and I'll share the link at the end, inshallah. So no problems about that. So critical thinking, what we have established is important in order to make good decisions and in order to, have impactful decisions. And you can do that. And the critical thinking is based on factual information. So all the filters that pass through, the information that passes through in your mind when you make a decision, it should be all factual based. And there could be different ways of doing that we can touch upon. Any questions up till now, you can let me know. I want you to just look at the screen. I hope everybody can read it. I've tried to keep it as clear as possible. Just take 1 or 2 minutes to look at the screen, read it, and let me know in the chat box, what do you see? What do you think? Okay, I'm sorry if somebody cannot read, because I know this text is a little bit. How can we detach ourselves from the thoughts as we are making the decisions for ourselves? We need to be conscious about our thoughts when we are making decisions. We first need to be conscious that assumptions and biases are something that really affect us. And when we are about to make decisions, we must check on those assumptions and biases, and that we will see in this presentation as well. A little bit of thought process, how we can do that, right? Reliability of data, checking facts. For anybody who can't read, let me read it out for you. The lady is reading a book. She says this book says that only 55% of households in the UK have internet access. That figure seems very low. And I would better check with national statistics. There's a government organization, so they should have a reliable data. And then she goes and checks and she sees that it is 70%, which is the actual number. Then she thinks that why the author is wrong. Then she goes and checks and she sees that the edition of the book which she is reading is actually very old. So what we learn from this diagram is confirming the facts, reliability of data, authenticated information, very nice. All these things are very important. Up-to-date information, timeline of the information. Just by reading one thing, just by reading one book, just by looking at one piece of information, we should not be making our decisions. We should always, and remember these golden words, we should always challenge our thoughts. We should always challenge our assumptions. We should always ask ourselves, why am I assuming something about somebody like this? Why am I thinking about somebody like this? It is because of my influences. It is because of my own experiences. It is because of how the experiences that I've been through. That is why I'm thinking that way. When I look at a certain kind of a person, when I see certain kind of a material, when I read some kind of a text, and I have these assumptions and biases in my mind, so I just want to move forward, and I don't want to ask about those biases and assumptions. Challenging your thoughts and challenging your assumptions is the key, as we have seen in the poll that you have just taken as well. Challenge your experiences and biases, very right. So I hope everybody has read this. I'll share this with you as well. This is very, very good diagram. I borrowed this from somewhere. That is why the diagram is in this form right now. But I hope those who are not able to read it can read it when they see the presentation. All right. So let us move forward just to give you a thought. This gave you a perspective about critical thinking, that what critical thinking actually is. Now, what are the barriers to critical thinking? What are the barriers to critical thinking? Number one, spotlight effect. What is spotlight effect? Now imagine that you're standing in a dark room and there's a light which is only above you and you cannot see anything else in that room, right? How do we know that this is the right time to make a decision? Well, sometimes in life, you just have to make a decision. The choice of not making a decision is not there. So you have to make a decision. Now I'm saying to you, how can you make a better decision? And those are the things that we are mentioning, right? So you have a decision of not doing something, but even that requires some kind of critical thinking, right? So coming back to the barriers of the critical thinking, number one is a spotlight effect. Imagine that you're in a dark room where the light is only upon yourself, not focusing on others, available possible options. Very right. Thank you, Yusuf Shaib, that you're not focusing on others, just focusing on yourself, focusing on your own perspective, my political, my economical, my social worldview, how things are for me, the things should be for everybody else. So I should be careful that am I doing this, that looking for things that just confirm to what I think. And that brings me to the second point, which is the confirmation bias. The confirmation bias is to develop a quick belief and seek information that bolsters our belief. That means I'm comfortable to talk to people, to sit with people, to be with the people who think in the same way as I do, and because that's the comfort zone that I have. I don't want to be challenged in my thoughts. I don't want to be challenged in my beliefs. So I like to be with those people who think in the same way and who conform to what I think, but I do not have the evidence for it. The short-term emotions is, of course, making decisions when you're angry and anxiety and greed and in fear. And that is also never right. When you study emotional intelligence also, and I did a workshop on that as well, you can see the recording when I share with you with this recording, that these emotions, they drive either good decisions or bad decisions. But if you give some time to these emotions, they can make you make good decisions. But if you immediately act upon emotions, they will, lead you towards wrong decisions. Overconfidence, you know, closing all the other options, not looking at other possibilities, thinking that I am always right, that we are always right, that whatever we think is right, and that how we act and function is always right, right? So these are four things, four barriers, without going too much into detail about it because of time, is that we should be cautious about. Number one, am I only thinking about my own environment? Number two, am I just looking at the information, talking to people, and seeking advice from those people who think in the same way as I do? Am I acting in my emotions, or am I being overconfident that I'm just saying, I know I'm right and I have to be right because I'm always right. And then I don't look at other options as well, right? So if you have any questions, we can always ask here, sorry. So next slide is the pillars of critical thinking. What are the three most important things of critical thinking? Now we are coming into more detail orientation or actions, right? And you can take some notes as well if you're not already doing that. Number one, like any problem definition that you have in your situations, number one, the problem must be very clear. Number one, the problem must be very clear. Number two, there must be some kind of an analysis or research for that decision. And number three, I should be able to make a good inference or a good conclusion. Now, I'm not saying that whether I should eat this ice cream or I should not eat this ice cream, should I be doing this whole process. But every decision that I make requires some kind of critical thinking, some kind of problem statement, some kind of analysis, some kind of conclusion. Of course, if the decision is too big, if the decision is very impactful, if the decision is something that has a lot of impact on others, then I must, have a deeper and greater analysis and, go deeper into these three things. But if the decision is small, if it is not something that is very critical or big, I will be still taking these three steps, but not in great detail. So let's get deeper into these three steps. Now, this is a very, very important slide. And this is based on a research that shares that what are those 9 elements of critical thinking? What are those 9 elements of critical thinking? Now, please, you can let me know in your comments also if I'm going too fast or if I'm covering too much, if I'm making this too complex, because I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, right? And because of the sake of the time, so I can't go too much in depth right now as well, but I will share information with you more if you're interested, and in my WhatsApp group as well. I will share more information. But I just want you to have this checklist of these 9 things. These 9 things must be there in your mind every time that you're making decisions, especially important decisions. Now, what do these 9 things mean? Let us look at that. Number 1. Okay, I will try to slow down. And if you have any questions from the previous slides, please do ask. If something is not clear, please ask. I just write it down here. If you want me to cover something again, I'll be more than happy to do that. Okay, so the pillars part, as I said, number 1, these are the 3 foundations on which the critical thinking stands, right? And I'm going to open these 3 things into those 9 things that you saw in the next slide. These 3 things are important for any problem-solving approach, right? Will help to practically apply these into our lives. I will try to give examples as well. So these 3 things, like number 1 is the problem statement. Like for example, somebody says that, if I try to give an example, I can't quit smoking. Now you tell me, is that a good problem statement? I can't quit smoking. Is that a good problem statement? No. And Kamal knows that. Yeah, because it is missing some information. Who can't quit smoking? Where can't you quit smoking? Why can't you quit smoking? When can't you quit smoking? Exactly, right? So the second part is, now I need to do some analysis on this problem statement, some research. What is happening? I just can't profile a person, can't use my biases, can't use my assumptions. Oh, this guy is wearing an earring in his ears, so he just cannot stop smoking. So I just better not talk to him. This is profiling. This is stereotypical thinking. And that will then, the third part will affect my conclusion or my inference as well, right? Now, if I go into the 9 circles, the number 1 part was the problem statement. Example that we have done already, that if I can't quit smoking, or, I just can't exercise. I just don't want to exercise. I mean, I can't exercise. Why can't you do exercise? The person will tell you that it doesn't have any impact on me, right? So that is an assumption, a bias that they have in their mind, right? So the first thing that comes is the problem definition or the problem statement. You must ask who the problem is happening with, what is the problem, when is the problem happening, where is it happening, what is the impact of the problem. Ask them questions, which is the next thing, that to get more detail in the problem statement, right? So just don't make a decision based on some information that comes to you, but actually go deeper into defining the problem, and this will come through practice. The second thing is asking questions. You should ask questions. Why, what, when, how, which, right? And now the questions, without going too much in detail, are 2 types. This is very important. Questions are of 2 types. If you already know this, that's great. But if you don't, then let me explain that a little bit to you. There's an open-ended question, and there's a closed-ended question. A closed-ended question is a question to which the answer is only yes or no, black or white, only 1 or 0, 2 options. Whereas the open-ended question is a question in which the person gives you an explanation and details. Now, for example, if I ask you a question, are you satisfied? What would be the answer? Are you satisfied? What would be the answer? Yes or no, but doesn't give me too much information, right? So these kind of questions sometimes might work, but in investigation, in analysis, these are not good questions because they don't give you a lot of detail about that person. Now, how can I change this question? Are you satisfied? Like, for example, are you satisfied with this car? And I can ask you the question, what do you think about this car? Or how do you feel about this car? Will that give you more information? Right? Of course. So change the question from yes or no to a more detail-oriented question. How can you do that? It will require practice. So when you're going into a crucial conversation, when you are going into a discussion or your thought process, or talking to somebody where you're about to make a decision, prepare your questions. Ask them questions which enables them to give you an explanation, share their emotions with you, and also share their experiences with you, right? So for example, There could be other questions as well, like yes or no question that, do you like this chair? Yes or no. But how do you feel about this chair? What do you think about this chair? Or similarly, what happened? Why did you, for what made you do what you did? Now, if I ask somebody, why did you do this? I'm already assuming that this person is guilty of doing it because I asked him or her, why are you doing this? So ask, what made you do this? Or how did you do this? So they will explain things to you. And when they explain things to you, more questions will come out, more information will come to you, and you will be able to process the information in a better way, right? I hope this was clear. If somebody wants me to repeat this, I'll be more than happy to repeat it. But I mean, I know we should practice about this, but since this is only a 50-minute session, so I can't make you practice right now. But maybe someday we can have a full day or half day workshop on this, right? So the second thing is challenging the bias or examining the evidence. Now we talked about this, and we saw in the poll as well that this is one of the major things that people feel that they need to fix, and because they don't feel that they challenge their assumptions or biases when they're making decisions. Have the courage to debate and argue with your own thoughts and assumptions. Ask yourself, why am I thinking this way? Ask yourself, what makes this assumption true or false that is coming into my mind right now? What evidence do I have? Because there's no room for gut feeling and critical thinking. And you know, how will this come? This habit of challenging your bias and assumptions, it will come through practice. It will come through practice, and most importantly, what we say in emotional intelligence, it will come through self-awareness. What do I mean by self-awareness? Knowing yourself. What kind of assumptions do I have? What kind of biases do I carry? What kind of thoughts come to my mind? And then asking yourself, and having the courage to ask yourself, what is the evidence for this thought that is coming to my mind? When I look at somebody who is not very familiar to me, when I look at somebody whose getup or whose profile is not something that I am accustomed to see, what comes into my mind? What usually comes into my mind as a thought process, that is my bias, that is my assumption. And immediately I should be able to challenge that assumption or bias, that why am I thinking this way? What evidence do I have to think about it this way? Because if I will not ask these questions, if I will not ask for these evidences, my biases or my assumptions will take over my decision making and my thought process. So the best thing to do is to challenge yourself to identify the evidence that forms your beliefs, right? And here also, I would like to add that coaching is something that can really help. You know, coaching is a tool that allows you to practice this, because there is no 2-day or 3-day workshop or training where you go inside the classroom and you come out with all your assumptions and biases removed. It has to come through practice, self-awareness, trying and trying and trying again, and having that courage to, you know, maybe write down at the end of the day, what kind of assumptions did I carry today? What kind of decisions did I made, and what kind of biases influenced my decisions? And I'm not going to do this tomorrow. So these are some of the things that you can do to control your biases and assumptions and collect the evidence for that, right? The other thing is avoiding emotional reasoning and tolerating ambiguity. I feel this way, so it must be true. How many times do we feel that? I feel this way, so it must be true. Just because I know. Do not be afraid to say, I'm not sure or I don't know, right? Our strong feelings about different issues sometimes overshadow our decision making. So just do not rely on feelings, but rely on evidences. Avoiding emotional reasoning means what? Because I don't want to get too much into details and analysis. So I just think to myself, because I know something, I feel something, I'll just go with that. And I will not go too much into detail. I don't want to do the hard work of looking into research, into data, into evidence, just because I feel something, so it has to be right. And when we make decisions based on just feelings, it might just be right sometimes, but usually they turn out to be regretful decisions because something pops up, especially when you're starting a business, when you're working in an organization, when you're making a crucial financial decision, and you do not consider all the evidences and everything, and you just go on your feeling and gut feeling, it can be full of surprises. And when can we actually rely on gut feeling? When can we actually rely on gut feeling? I will say to that you just cannot find any evidence or any support for something that you have to decide, right? I understood here why we shouldn't, but when we can actually rely is my answer would be that when I do not have the evidence, when I do not have the support or any kind of data available for me to make a decision on something that I'm faced with, I will have to go with my intuition, my gut feeling. And that comes to the next circle, which is tolerating ambiguity. What does that mean is, what does that mean? Tolerating ambiguity is that things can sometimes be different. So you should be open to adaptability and change. Because if I've made a decision today based on my gut feeling or limited information that I had, there's a possibility that some information might come to me tomorrow. And I might have to change my decision on the basis of that. And that is tolerating ambiguity. So do not be afraid to say, I'm not sure or I don't know, and I look for more information, right? In the flight and fight situation, use of gut feeling. Yes, you can do that. As I said, you don't have the time to collect evidences at that time. So use your intuition. But as I said, have the room for ambiguity. Nothing can be just black and white. Things change today and information can come more, right? What is next is others' interpretation and avoiding oversimplification. What does that mean? If it happened for one or few, it can be true for all. How many times do we feel that? Because because of one person, we profile the entire group. Because of one person, we profile the entire country, entire city, entire community, entire family, and we just want an entire group, right? We need to be more cognizant or be more aware that every individual carries their own identity, right? So if it happened for one or few, it can be true for all. So do not try to look for oversimplification just because you don't want to look for evidence, right? This is again has to do with just having a bias in your mind. And similarly, others' interpretation. Look for others' interpretation. Look for other sources. Look for other information. Talk to people. Ask about suggestions and advices, and then make your own conclusions. The goal is to find an explanation that accounts for the most evidence and fewest assumptions, right? So if any questions, please let me know. The last thing is conclusion. Carefully consider all the pieces of the puzzle together before deciding, before making a decision. Now, these 9 things give you a list of things that you can do. Number 1, have you defined the problem? Number 2, are you asking questions to get more clarity? Explain oversimplification. Avoiding oversimplification means using your assumption about one person and applying it over everybody else that relates to that group, for example. Oversimplification is the basis of widespread discrimination nowadays. Yes, it is true, because we don't want to go into evidences and support. We don't want to go into details and information. So if one person is like that, all the other people from this community would be like that. So that's one example that is there. So I'm just oversimplifying the whole situation in my mind because I don't want to go. Again, these are all the steps which are pushing you towards research, towards detail orientation. Generalization, thank you, very nice word. It's generalization as well. So generalizing about people, stereotyping about people, oversimplification, because you don't want, because all these steps are actually pushing you and challenging you into thinking about things that otherwise, I would not be doing, collecting evidences, challenging biases and all this. So I hope that was clear. So the last thing is the inference or the conclusion that we are doing, right? What does that mean? Is to put all the pieces of information that you have collected by defining the problem, by asking the questions, by challenging your bias and assumptions, by collecting evidence wherever you can, by avoiding emotional reasoning and removing yourself from emotions and going more into facts. Removing yourself from emotions, going more into facts, avoiding emotional, tolerating ambiguity, be open to more information. And oversimplification means avoiding generalization, stereotypical thinking, and looking at others' interpretation as well, that what are others thinking, what do others say about this, and how can I, act upon this, right? So I hope these 9 things were clear on this. Okay, so moving forward, some of the examples from our daily life about critical thinking, if you still want some information on this, and that is, a first responder coming upon the scene of an accident to investigate. Critical thinking is highly important here. A manager trying to resolve a disagreement between employees, so they collect the evidences. A person running a small business trying to increase sales and reduce cost while not having impact on their employees. A soccer coach, a sports coach, working during halftime on new tactics to understand the weak points and the strong points of the opponent team An applicant preparing for a job interview to determine how he or she should tell their strengths which align with the organization where he is going for the interview. Parents anticipating the cost of sending their young child to college. Can you think of more examples you can share here for critical thinking? These are some of the examples that we face in our daily lives while we're doing critical thinking. If you want, you can share more examples here as well. If you have any questions, you can always ask. All right. So let us move forward. The next slide is, I would like to ask you, and you can write this in the chat room as well, or you can write it in the notes that you're taking. And I hope you're taking notes because I think a lot of notes is required. Which element will you like to start from and why? If you are working on your critical thinking, which is that element where would you like to start from and why? If you like, you can share your answer in the chat room. You can directly message me, or you can write in your notes, but do write it with yourself so that you know that where you can start working on in order to become better in critical thinking. You might be doing a lot of these things, but might be missing out on a few things. So if somebody was like to share, they can tell me. For example, if you ask me, I am not very good with asking questions. And generally, I don't ask questions if I'm making decisions. I want to make these decisions very quickly. And I realize that afterwards. Or generally, I ask closed-ended questions. So I might be sharing this learning with you, but I'm still practicing myself. And number two, of course, my assumptions and my biases that overshadow my decisions. These are some things that I am working on and I would like to work on as well. If you would like to share something here, you can share, or otherwise we can move forward. Problem definition, because as being an engineer, our critical thinking implies when we have a sudden plant shutdown or some equipment maintenance. Very true. But it requires in your personal lives as well. It requires in every kind of decision, whether it's professional or personal, whether you're a housewife or a husband or a boss or a team leader. Critical thinking is very important if you want to make good decisions in life. And these are some of the tools that you can use, right? And problem definition, because it is the main aim. All right. Let's move forward for the sake of time. Now, how important it is for you to make, to become a good and strong decision maker, right? On a scale of 1 to 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important it is for you? Can everybody share that? How important is it for you to become a good and strong decision maker? 7. Okay. 10. That's great. 10 is important. 9, 7. And I would like to ask why 7, 8, but I will not ask you right now. Hassan, 9. So everybody has some really strong numbers here that, that I want to become a good and strong decision maker. When you want to become a good and strong decision maker, you have seen some parts of the critical thinking and aspects and elements that we need to work on. And especially 60% of the people here said 11. All right, so we have overcommitment, and that's great. So we saw that challenging the assumptions and bias is something that 60% of people here and on LinkedIn as well believe that is something that they really need to work on to challenge their own assumptions and biases. And that takes practice, as I said. 6, I want to avoid emotional reasoning because I always think with my emotions. Very true. That is an situation with most of us. This is a situation with most of us because in emotions, I'll give you one tip about emotions. I covered this in my workshop on emotional intelligence, but I'll give you one tip on emotions. And you can see that in my workshop as well. But the one tip is when some emotions come to you, not only when you're angry, but even when you are very happy, take a sip of water, take a glass of water, or just sit down for 10 seconds or 15 seconds and then say something and then make a decision. What happens is that your information from the emotional side of brain enters into the logical side of the brain and you're able to think better and make decisions. Just a small tip. Take a sip of water, even when you're too happy, because when we are very happy, we make commitments that we can't fulfill. And when we are very angry, we make decisions that we regret. Just take 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds, take a sip of water, leave that place, sit down, and then make a decision. And you'll see that inshallah it will be a good decision, right? So that I can tell you. And I've tried this, I've practiced this, and it really works wonders. So we all want to be good decision makers and strong decision makers. Deep breaths, anything that gives you a break of 10 seconds, and that'll be great. So we want to be good and strong decision makers. You're welcome. So in order for that, I'm sharing here to take a QR code for you, to take a small assessment, and I'm sharing the link here as well for the WhatsApp and the form. Take a small assessment of just 3 questions, and we can have a free one-on-one coaching session based on that assessment for first 10 participants, for you to be able to start your critical thinking journey. And it will be a small gift from me to you for you to be able to discuss, maybe it's challenging your assumptions, maybe it's your biases, maybe it's your problem statement, maybe it's your emotional reasoning, maybe it's your oversimplification, maybe it's many other things. So just, go to this link, and I've given the link here as well. And you can join my WhatsApp group on the link below if anybody is not there already, because I will share more information with you based on this material in the WhatsApp group, right? I will do that. I will post it on the WhatsApp group as well. I'll just post it in next few minutes. So take this assessment, and we can have a small discussion. And remember that it requires practice and self-awareness, and that is what coaching can really do for you, right? So let me move forward for the sake of time, so that you have, and I've opened the WhatsApp group as well. I've opened the WhatsApp group. You can write comments there and ask questions. I will keep it open for some time after this workshop. It's already open. So my last question is, and that brings me to the end of this workshop also, as committed by my time. It's right now exactly 4:50 here in Pakistan. And so I've taken 50 minutes of your time, and I've tried to finish it. What was most useful for you? I know that a lot of things require practice, a lot of things require role plays, a lot of things require more examples. And we can do that if I get more encouragement from all of you. We can maybe do a half-day session. Maybe we can do a one-on-one in-person session someday. And maybe we can do a half-day session online with more examples or more, role plays. But right now, what I've given you is a list of things that you can look at, things that you can consider, and start thinking in that frame of mind to become better critical thinkers, inshallah. So do take this assessment. It's just 3 questions. I'll put it on the WhatsApp as well. And, and we can take it further from there. So what was most useful for you? Please share that with me from this session. Avoiding emotions, asking questions. Yeah. Asking questions, very important. I'll tell you another important thing that I've learned from my experiences. One thing that I told you about emotional intelligence, that take a break of 10 seconds. That's it, just 10, 15 seconds. The other thing is the most important part of our communication, and which we think is very simple, but we miss out on that, are 2 things. Number 1, asking questions, and number 2, listening. Asking questions and listening. Asking good questions which do not have biases, right? Asking good questions which do not have biases. And remember, do not ask closed-ended questions. When you're even talking to your child, if you ask him, did you do this? Now you're giving him an option of just saying yes or no. So if he wants to tell the truth, he will say, yes, I did it. And he knows then the punishment is coming. Or he might just lie to you and say, no, I didn't do it. But why don't you ask him, what made you do this? And these kind of questions. So they will have a better explanation to give you, a better story to tell you. And I'm preaching this right now, but I'm the one who also needs to practice this a lot in making questions. So half-day session would be really good, yes, but a half-day online session would be really painful for all of us. So it will be a one-on-one session that will be great that we can do, and I'll try to design that as well, and help to gain the awareness that there are lots of areas, factors to look into while making any single decision. Yes, when you become good in this, then you will not know that you are doing these 9 things together. But right now in the start, you need to practice this. And remember, practice requires self-awareness, and self-awareness requires constant push and constant accountability. And that accountability can come to you when you talk to a coach, or when you talk to anybody like a mentor or somebody that can keep a check on that. That to take or not to take a decision is also a decision, and we need to be critical. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I try to close, try to close this all into a small, small dish for all of you. Although this is a very complex subject, as I'm saying again and again. but I'll try to share more information with you on the WhatsApp. Do fill the assessment. I look forward to talking to all of you. I look forward to having our discussion. And I really hope and I really wish that all of you, go towards making good decisions, critical thinking, because decisions are very important parts of our lives. And they really have an impact not only on ourselves, but the people all around us and are our stakeholders. Personal accountability is encouraged in Islam, if you only take it. Very, very true. When it comes to the Islamic point of view also, and I will end it on that, just one small story. If you read on the Islamic perspective as well, you know about the story of Musa alayhi salam, right? Do you know about the story of Musa? That he went up and he came down and people started worshiping the calf. Remember what Musa asked Samri when in Surah Taha, when he came down? Did he ask him, why did you do it? Or did you do it? Everybody knew he did it. But he asked him the question, what made you do it? And that is an open-ended question. What made you do it, O Samri? And he told the reason, and he was then punished accordingly. So then only we can be able to decide that if somebody did it purposefully or somebody did it by mistake. So make this a habit, make this a habit in yourself, that we ask questions in which the other person is given the opportunity to explain themselves, and that we collect evidence, and that we challenge our assumptions and biases. We are living in a world where people are ruled by their assumptions and biases. If you're not able to bring them down, we will never be able to make a change. So I end this session with this because we've already reached our time. If you have any other question, let me know. I look forward to your assessments, and I look forward to your feedback on the WhatsApp group. And I wish you all the very best and a very nice weekend. Thank you so much, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much. I'll see you all in the WhatsApp group.